Hello everyone and welcome back to the Ryan Retro channel. First of all, I'd like to say a really big thank you to everybody who subscribed. I just hit 1,000 subscribers in just 6 days on this channel. That is insane! Seriously, thank you so much to everyone who liked, commented and subscribed. I love you guys. So, in order to celebrate, what better thing to do than to bring back the secret console? Yes, by popular demand, here is another video on the mythical console that shall not be named. If you missed my first episode on the secret console, check out the card at the top right of the screen or in the description to see the first episode testing some different games to what we'll see today. I also gave you 2 big tips that will help you run games smoothly. And once again today, I'm going to give you 2 big tips to help you get everything running smoothly on your Retroid Pocket 5. So first of all, what better place to start than probably the most requested game on the console? I can't say the name for obvious reasons, so let's just call it Little Prince Boy Exhale of the Crazy. So this game is running, honestly this game, we don't usually run it on this console. This game is usually run on the Wii U, but for some reason my copy of it just isn't working. It gets stuck when he opens his eyes at the beginning of the game and I just get a white screen. I searched the internet and it's a very common issue. It's been happening for years on various systems, from handhelds to computers. So I don't know whether I need to try a different file of the game or whether I need to change some settings, but so far the Wii U version is not working for me. But this is the mythical console version, and right now it's running at 30 frames per second, but it is dipping down sometimes to around 20. I think this frame rate is going to be quite hard to see on the screen. So using the floating icon built into the Retroid Pocket 5, we can bring a floating FPS counter onto the screen. So I'll put that somewhere where you can see it, and hopefully you're going to be able to see what kind of frame rate we're getting as I run around. You'll see it's mostly solid around 30 frames per second. It is occasionally dipping, but it runs quite well. I have the feeling that when you get into more intense battles and further into the game, this might be a little bit tricky to run. But just the fact that it's running so well at the moment is really encouraging. So in order to test it a little bit, I'm gonna go skydiving. Let's go! Well, I managed to maintain 31 frames per second throughout that, so it's running quite well. I'll have to see how it goes further into the game, but for now, I'm just impressed that it runs. Let's move on to another game, because we kind of failed this one. For the remainder of these tests, I'll keep the frame rate up here in the top right corner. So you're actually going to see the frame rate in both top corners, so hopefully one of them at least will be visible in all situations. This game is one that I just picked up yesterday, and I have 2 of the same game in this series. It's very cute, and it runs at a completely solid 60 frames per second. Okay, it seems like I spoke too soon. The game has just completely crashed about 10 seconds after I said it was running flawlessly. Anyway, let's get into the next game because it's basically exactly the same game, but in 3D. This is game number 5 in the same series, and this time it's in true 3D. This game runs at 30 frames per second instead of 60, but as you can see, it holds the 30 frames per second very solidly. We can run around, we can swing our sword, everything is perfectly smooth, never dropping below 30 frames per second. The next game I'd like to show you is a bit of a curveball, no pun intended. This is a game that I used to love on my old Windows phone years ago. The whole game is only 50 megabytes, which is crazy. Some of the photos I take on my professional camera are more than 50 megabytes, just for a picture. This whole game is 50 megabytes and it's really fun. Of course it runs fine on this device. It used to run fine on phones from years ago, but it looks very crispy with the cartoony art style, and you can control it either with the control stick or you can control it with the touchscreen, and both work really well. The game is called Tennis in the Face, and the goal is to hit clowns in the face with tennis balls. It's just a silly game that's really fun and addictive to play. Trying to hit them both in the face with only one ball is just so addictive. And it's a game that you can just pick up and play easily whenever you only have a few minutes to play a game, and you don't really want to think too much about the storyline or any difficult challenges. I highly recommend checking out Tennis in the Face. Our next game is pretty much exactly the same game as the one we saw 2 games ago, but with a different skin on it. It's running here at around 48 frames per second. When I tried it yesterday, it was running really smoothly, and it seems to be dropping frames a little bit today. But still, 48 seconds is something I would definitely consider playable. Of course, a solid 60 would be preferred, but personally, anything above 30 is fine for me, especially a cozy game like this. It's not a twitch shooter. So you can run around harvesting plants and playing a cozy game like this with around 40 to 45 frames per second. And just before we move on, here's one more game in the cozy farm sim genre. This one is really funny. It begins by name-dropping competing games, saying that your character was asleep and you were dreaming and talking about things like Harvest and Stardew, which are the competitors in the genre. It makes no mistake about the games it took inspiration from, but this one has you running around cleaning up grass with a sword. It's really cute, really fun. It runs at a very solid 60 frames per second, never really dropping below 59. It reminds me of Littlewood that I showed in the previous Secret Console video, and it's just a really fun time on the RP5. I think it's a game really suited to a little handheld like this, especially once again with such a great screen. Every game I play on this device, the colors just pop out of it. For anybody who's ordered the RP5 and hasn't received it yet, you are going to love this screen, trust me. Moving on to a new genre now, but keeping in line with games that are going to run perfectly smooth at 60 frames per second, here we have a game about a little boy trying to defeat dragons. This game is really cute because as you run through the level, you actually transform into different characters. It's also kind of a puzzle game because as you run through the levels, you'll realize that a lot of the ways you go are not the correct way. So you end up having to backtrack and find different ways and try and find what is the correct way to get to the next level. It's sometimes really fun and sometimes a little bit infuriating, honestly, but it's a very cute game and one that runs absolutely flawlessly. So for example, this one you probably think you have to jump over here and run to the next part. But if you do that, it takes you back to the beginning. So what you actually have to do is go down here. Here again, if you go down to the right, you'll get taken back to the beginning part, so you have to go down to the left. There's a lot of trial and error involved. So here we're going to fight a boss, the Mecha Dragon. This is probably one of the hardest bosses I've ever fought in any game ever, because you have to hit him in the head, but it's so hard to hit him in the head because it's covered in spikes. If anyone plays this game regularly and has any tips about how to play it, please let me know, because this is very difficult. Moving on to something more fast-paced now, we have the Prince of Persia. This runs absolutely flawlessly on this console at 60 frames per second without ever dropping down. Back in the Little Prince world, we have an HD remaster of a classic game. It looks beautiful and runs at a very smooth 60 frames per second. The feel of this game is very responsive and you can feel that it's definitely going to be a smooth experience. I'm going to be including this game in an upcoming video where I'm going to be comparing original games with their HD remasters on various platforms on the Retroid Pocket 5. If you're interested in seeing those comparison videos, please subscribe and wait for that. So now let's talk about those two big tips I mentioned in order to keep everything running smoothly. First of all, go to the GPU driver manager and change it from the system GPU driver Qualcomm driver to a Mesa turnip driver. The one that I'm using is revision 9v2. I did try out the newer version 12, but that one gave me some crashes. So at least for now, I would recommend you to try the 9v2 driver. So by selecting this, it will then launch all of your games with the turnip driver by default. Since making this change, I've had almost no crash with any game. The only crashes I've had, upon further research online, I found that they're really common and people have been having these crashes for years, so it's not specific to this device. Once you have the Mesa turnip driver selected, you're pretty much good to go. The only issue I had, which I talked about in the last video, was that there was a problem with the audio crackling and stuttering. I'm really happy to tell you that I've now fixed that completely. So in order to fix that, we're going to go into the advanced settings of the app, go to audio, and then under output engine, this will be set to auto. We want to change it to Cubeb. C-U-B-E-B, Cubeb, Cubeb. I'm not sure how to say it, it sounds fun. So make sure you set your output engine to Cubeb, and from then you shouldn't have any audio issues whatsoever. Everything should be running fine. So long as there's no other issue causing crashes, the kind that have been prevalent for years, everything should now be running fine. You should be emulating the secret mythical console very well at 30 to 60 frames per second on pretty much any game you'd like to play with no audio problems, no crashes, and decent frame rates. So if this video was helpful to you, please give me a like, please leave a comment and subscribe, and I'll be happy to see you again in tomorrow's video where we're going to be looking at AAA Android games, and yet again I have a big tip to help you out. Thanks for watching.